Hello everyone, my name is NBZ and welcome to episode 36 of this podcast that I do with my friend here, Bally. But this week, something's changed, because, my friends, we have rebranded. Yes, as we told you last week, the name of the show is changing, but that doesn't mean that, everything else is. You still got us here. So welcome to the first episode of ThisNintendoLife, but we're keeping the episode numbers in sequence, because, I don't know. Why are we doing that, Bally? Hi, Bally, by the way. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, MZ. It's just for consistency.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's nicer. It makes everyone's iTunes match up, I think.
Exactly. Otherwise, we're going to have, episode 1 and 2 up to 35 twice over, and it'll look just really weird. So this is the compromise, but it's fine. So here we are. We have a brand new, shiny...
A brand new start, as Miles Kennedy would say.
As Miles Kennedy would belt out on the stage, absolutely, with Tremonti backing him up with some sick licks in the background. But enough about musical stuff. Let's talk about some stuff that's been changed with the podcast. So, of course, it's now called This Nintendo Life, as you will have noticed, and we have some new artwork, some fantastic stuff that was done by a great graphic designer, and yeah, we're really, really pleased with it. So I hope you guys enjoy that. It's looking good. Among other things, we also have a Twitter account for the first time in our history as a podcast. So you can follow us now. So Bally, do you want to direct people to where they can do that?
So to follow us, we are at TNL Podcast. That's at TNL Podcast, and obviously that stands for This Nintendo Life.
Absolutely. Now, we did try and get This Nintendo Life on Twitter, but unfortunately we found out that it is one letter over the allowed sequence of letters on Twitter. So it would have been This Nintendo Life, which I'm not sure would have been a good idea. So we're sticking with TNL Podcast. So you go on your phone, follow us right now. Go ahead, do it, and we'd be very glad to follow you back and have
for
you
all the
part.
updates on when the show's coming out, content that we're talking about. We'll talk lots about that on the Twitter account.
I might even tweet pictures of myself sitting with Audacity on my computer screen. It could be exciting as that.
Yeah, that'd be
ladies
really
and gentlemen.
authentic.
Right, raw material from the show.
Behind the scenes.
Exactly, yeah. And you want to know that stuff, guys. You want to know that stuff. Among other things, we have a new email address, which we will talk about when we get to that segment, and some other stuff, by the end of the show. But, yeah, how about we just kick things off, Bally, here. Tell us, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, as usual, we have what we've been playing. We've also got some of your emails. And then there's been quite a bit of news. 2 very big announcements that we are going to talk about for the final segment.
Which are?
Well, they're a secret. You got to wait around till the final segment. We're not telling you. Everyone now.
All right. I'm pretty sure most people know what those are anyway. But sure, we'll
They don't.
We'll keep the secrets. All right, Bally, it's fine. You live in your fantasy land where no one pays attention to anything. That's fine. Okay, well, how about we kick things off? Bally, what have you been playing in the past couple of weeks?
I have been ploughing on with some more Fire Emblem 7. I am now up to, I think, Chapter.
You're too much in the episode idea for the podcast.
I've just finished 23X, so I guess I'm about to start chapter 24.
Right, somewhere like that.
And yeah, it is getting tough. And this is what I'm realizing more and more about Fire Emblem versus Advance Wars in my mind, is that as a game, Fire Emblem just evolves far, far, far more than Advance Wars. And it's for the very simple reason that your units change. They become far more powerful. That sort of, the RPG element of leveling up is so much more. It really changes up the game because your units become so much more powerful. The enemies likewise become so much more powerful. And in Advance Wars, it's not necessarily that enemies become more powerful. They just often introduce more enemies, or they put enemies in difficult situations. Whereas Fire Emblem, there's just far more emphasis on, right, well, you're now level X, we've got to match our guy with level X, and you're going to have a battle, and it's going to be a lot more different to the start of the game because it's a bit more epic. And obviously, your best units, there becomes a real disparity in the power between your units, far more so than Advance Wars.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fire Emblem's definitely about this persistent progression, whereas, as I believe from Advance Wars, like every map you start from nothing, right? You start from zero and you build up your army over the course of the game.
Not every map. There's a lot of missions where you do start with certain units.
Okay.
But
the basic premise is like you're building like within that kind of closed context, whereas
there is a basic premise of building units, which is important.
Yeah. Whereas Fire Emblem, I feel like Advance Wars probably relies more on kind of the tactics and strategy in my mind, because with Fire Emblem there is the potential, owing to those RPG mechanics, that you can over-level your characters, right? And certainly there are the arenas in the game, which I know you haven't been using. And, you know, when I tend to play through Fire Emblem, I try and abuse those a lot and, you know, max my characters to 20 and then, like, promote them at that point so I have, you know, the most amount of stat boost that I can possibly get. And if you are just kind of abusing that stuff too much, it can turn out to be, like, the maps not being any sort of challenge anymore as you just plow through enemies and not have to really think about it. So, there's that balance there to be struck. But I think the fact that you're not using arenas and like you're not promoting people at 20, you're just promoting them as they are, I think that keeps it as a more kind of natural balance throughout the game. So I'm sure you'll have a nice ramp up as it goes along. So.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of promotion items still to use. I've only promoted Rebecca so far, actually.
Oh wow, okay.
A sniper, so I've got a lot of magic users I'm keen to promote. And yeah, really looking forward to it. My aim is to finish it before Xenoblade 3D comes out, because that is the next long game that I want to play. So
I'm very excited about that as well. Bally, you're like fulfilling all my wishes here.
I know, right?
7, Xenoblade, it's just going well. All right, well, that can't be just what you've been playing. You've been playing something else as well.
I have finished. I've beaten the main game of Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, which
and
is
you're
actually
also
your
a thief.
copy.
Yeah.
I am a thief. I stole your copy, and I've been playing a new save file of that, and it's such a solid game. It's first off, I want to completely agree with what you were saying before, MBZ, when I talked about Tropical Freeze on the show. These two games are unbelievably similar. They could barely be more similar. There are a couple of differences that I'll get to, but they really are. They're exactly the same engine, the same sound design, physics, everything. Like,
it almost feels like Tropical Freeze is like a level pack for this first game in many senses. And, you know, that's great because there's loads of really well-designed things in Tropical Freeze I watched you play through that game. But they are, like, they share design ethos in pretty much every single way otherwise, so yeah.
Yeah, and, like, this game, because the enemies are, you know, they're basically spiritual bongos. It's a bit weird.
They're like masks, like jungle masks, right?
Yeah.
You imagine like, you know, remember the juice drink umbongo, which was extremely racist.
Exactly.
You know, back in the day.
Yeah, it's incredibly kind of stereotypical African
like savages
tribe.
in the jungle kind of idea, which is like, well, yeah, let's not kind of go down that route, shall we? But
yeah. So obviously the game is very themed around them. And I was making this point earlier, MBZ, that I thought that they had designed all the bosses in the game and then decided, right, actually, we need to make these random, because all the bosses are basically different animals and things in the world of Donkey Kong. But then they get possessed by these masks. So my argument was that they just had all these bosses anyway, and they thought, well, how do we make sure these animals or whatever are evil and want to fight DK? Let's just introduce these masks, and they can mesmerize the animals to fight DK. So I think that in terms of boss structure and the way that the enemies are portrayed, and the idea that in Tropical Freeze they're all frozen, they're coming from the north or whatever. I think
they're all just letting it go, aren't they?
Exactly. I think I think Tropical Freeze, in terms of this I can't believe I'm talking about the story of these games, but
Come on,
I think
Bally.
the theming and the story is much stronger in Tropical
Yeah,
Freeze.
it's obviously a direct thing where they're like, okay, Vikings are invading, so therefore all
Yeah.
these enemies are going to be based around this one singular concept, and therefore we can take all these Arctic animals and like give them personalities of their own and make them like they have like probable reason to be attacking for what I don't know. I guess like sure, people in the Arctic don't have much food, so bananas are fruitful and tasty. So
Everyone wants bananas. Like they
yeah,
are a hot property in the world of DK.
yeah.
But yeah, I just think Tropical Freeze is slightly better thematically, and I also think the bosses in Tropical Freeze are much more tricky than this game. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the final boss, like you were saying, MBZ, is a really, really tough final
Look, I'm
boss.
going to say it straight out. He's a fucking prick. That guy is. I very almost just quit the game at that boss because I thought, man, this is some hot bullshit. And I was also really thankful at that time that I actually decided to play on the casual mode, which, if people didn't know, the original version of Donkey Kong Country Returns on Wii, you had two health. Not bars, just like hearts. So you had two hearts.
Hearts, yeah.
And if you had like a Diddy on your back, you had an extra two. In the casual mode on 3DS, they give you three, and three for Diddy, so you have six total, which just makes the
Yeah.
game more playable, I think. It would have been a lot more frustrating for me to play through it otherwise, but if I tried to play through that on Wii, I doubt I would have been able to do it, especially with the whole Wii Remote, shake to roll thing. It would have tested my patience too much, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I had the 3DS version, honestly.
And I played it on casual, and I don't necessarily think it makes the game a hell of a lot easier because it doesn't change the fact that this is a platformer and that you can fall down a pit.
Right, that's instant death,
And
obviously.
yeah, I mean it's good for those levels where there's a lot of shit just flying at you and you're picking up damage and you're oh god. So it is better for those levels, but overall it's not a huge change up.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about how this game looks on 3DS in your perspective and how it runs, because as we found out, this version of the game actually runs at 30 frames a second, which contrasts to the Wii variety, which runs at 60 and is a much more smooth experience. Did you notice that at all? Did it impact your experience, and how do you think it looked on the new 3DS?
I mean, it's got its ups and downs. I mean, we'll start with the negatives. Yes, it is 30 frames per second, and Tropical Freeze is one of the smoothest games, like visually, that I've ever played. Like, it just looks fantastic. So that's the downside. The good side is, and I've said this. I said this about Bit Trip Runner and loads of games. I love running on a 2D platform, 2D space, in a 3D world. I just love that, and that this game does that again, and with the 3DS's 3D, it just looks beautiful. It works so well. There are certain enemies that when you destroy them, they move about in a 3D space and they like fly towards you and things, like towards the camera. And those little things look really, really nice.
Nice little
and, like,
flourishes, right? Yeah.
yeah, it just looks really great. It's a really visually nice looking game in general. And the frame rate, while it's not as nice. It's still unbelievably playable. It's
And
really good.
as far as I can recall, it doesn't drop at all when you go to 3D. It stays pretty consistent, right?
Yeah,
when
no,
playing 3D.
it's smooth and well, I say smooth. It's as smooth as it's going to be.
Right, considering it's a
yeah.
port from the Wii game and everything. Another point that I was interested in is you were, waiting to get a new 3DS to play this game, and one of the reasons you cited that was the fact that it had a way better D-pad, and the D-pad on your old 3DS was breaking apart, and it was really kind of small and not good to use. And yet you were telling me that you actually played this game through with a circle pad instead. So you basically, the reason you wanted to play it kind of turned out to not be a reason at all. Did that surprise you? And I can't remember. Did you play Tropical Freeze with the analog stick or with the D-pad?
So I think you're maybe a little confused, MBZ, because you're right. I definitely said that I wanted the new D-pad to play lots of games, but I didn't mean specifically for DKC Returns. I just meant for like the Ambassador games and loads of other games, like Gunman Clive. That was a great use of the D-pad. So that's kind of what I was meaning in terms of that. So yeah, I used the circle pad, and it works fine. And like I said, was saying, before I used the analog stick for Tropical Freeze, and I don't know why. It works better for that style of game. I just like the momentum of DK seems in my mind to work better with a 3D stick rather than just the D-pad. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I generally, when it comes to 2D platformers, I have to use a D-pad of some form. But there are some where it feels like the game is designed in such a way that the analog stick works better, or if not better, like just as well as the D-pad. So, like the Rayman games, Origins and Legends, both of which I played with an analog stick instead. I don't know. It has a lot to do with the physics of the platforming for me, but it can go either way. So yeah.
And like in general in DKC Returns, I think it does another few things that are slightly better than Tropical Freeze. Like I just got the impression from this game that there are more minecart levels and those rocket levels. I felt like there were an awful lot in this game.
Yeah, there are quite a lot, and it's kind of interesting because it's almost that endless runner design school of thought, where you're literally just using a single button to change your verticality and basically dodge out of things as it's kind of just a linear straight. Like the barrel is going to go forward no matter what. You have to adjust its height to make sure you're dodging out the way, and loads of crazy I can't remember what boss it was. The one that's chasing you as you're trying to run away from it on the barrel. Loads of really ridiculous effects on the screen and kind of distorts things to try and make it hard for you to bump into them. I really enjoyed those levels. I thought they were great.
And there's just so much flying at you on those levels, and there was no slowdown for it at all. I thought those were visually just so impressive, and there's loads of levels like that in Tropical Freeze as well. But I really love that about these two new DK games.
So Bally, you were actually telling me you were playing a lot of this on the train, and I imagine there's lots of bumps and stuff that happen along the way. You now have the new 3DS with the stable 3D. I'm guessing that worked pretty well as you're traveling in and out. Having that stay in focus.
Yeah, no, it worked perfectly. I played the majority of this game just on the tube, actually. I think it took me about 8-9 hours in total to complete. And it's a great way of getting in a few gaming hours, to be honest. I plan to do that with Xenoblade as well, actually, because it's just
that will definitely help with that game
constant.
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
One thing that's really interesting about this game that I don't even think you've noticed, or if you have, you've not mentioned, but Returns, the biggest difference between this game and Tropical Freeze is that Returns has no underwater levels.
You're absolutely right. Wow, I didn't even realize that.
They're a really big part of Tropical Freeze because they have numerous underwater. There's a whole world with just underwater levels in Tropical Freeze.
Oh god, that sounds awful.
The final boss and No, but they're done really well, and I actually really liked the way Tropical Freeze did water levels. So that was actually a downside for me.
Well, it kind of makes sense that they would do it in Tropical Freeze because they brought David Wise back, and he was very well known because I think the underwater theme from the original Donkey Kong games is like one of the most well-known ones.
He remixed it for Tropical Freeze.
Yeah, and so it makes a lot of sense that he was there, and therefore they're like, look, we got this dude. He does great underwater music. Let's give him a whole world to work on. That lines up, I think. So.
And then there's just one more thing I want to say about this game, which I think is better than Tropical Freeze by a country mile, is that it's got secret levels. So these are locked off by a padlock. And when I started playing the game, I thought, all right, well, I guess there's some secret exits. As much as I hate them, I'm going to look up a video online and find out how I get to these secret levels and unlock those padlocks. And I was looking online for a few minutes and I couldn't find anything. I'm like, how on earth do you unlock these padlocks? So I just Google how do you unlock the padlocks in DKC Returns? And then it says, oh, you just buy the key from the shop. And I was like, what? You just go to the shop and buy a key? So I just go along to the shop and it costs 10 of those special banana coins or whatever you call them. And you just pay money for a key, and then you unlock these extra levels, and there's one per world. So I'm still working my way through those extra levels, but I just think that's a way better system to get to the same level you'd get to anyway with a secret exit. I just way prefer buying a key from a shop and unlocking it, rather than having to either work out these secret exits or look up online, because I just really dislike that system.
I mean, sure, but like I feel the whole key buying thing is kind of redundant. I I don't know. I just feel like it's just one extra step. Like they're just putting the padlock there for the sake of going to the shop and clicking. It's not like you're wanting for money throughout this game, right? Like you pick up loads of coins as you go along. So it seems a little bit arbitrary to me. And I don't know, it's weird that you had that thing and you didn't even go to the shop and check, because I played those levels as a matter of course. Like I got to that world, as soon as I got there, I just bought the key and just played all the levels and then the boss. So I didn't go back and play them or anything.
I never went to the shops ever.
I guess that's why you just never noticed. So, and it kind of also lends to the point.
And the shop has like the shop's got like a parrot and cool things like that, and where the parrot it'll like react. You can use it on a level, and it will react anytime you're near a puzzle piece. So if you are going to 100% the game, there's like stuff in the game that helps you
Oh, that's
go about
nice.
doing that. And
That's really helpful.
and I think that's really good. And I think Tropical Freeze had that, but I don't even know. I can't remember because I've not tried to 100% it.
And I don't think you
but
will
overall,
anytime. So.
yeah, I don't think I will, but overall, absolutely loved this game. Tropical Freeze is ever so slightly better for a few of the reasons I mentioned, such as water levels and the bosses and things like that. But this
frame rate and visuals.
Frame
and stuff.
rate,
yeah.
But this game has so much going for it, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone who owns a 3DS and likes a 2D platformer.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better ones on the system. I'm actually really glad they ported it from Wii, because the Wii one did have lots of problems, and despite it having a nicer frame rate and everything, like the fact that you had to shake the remote to roll, the fact that there were only two hearts that you had throughout the game, which made it way harder. I just think it's a more smooth, polished version of it.
Yeah.
And
the roll jump becomes so important later in the game, because you jump so much further with it, and that's really a downside to have to shake the Wiimote to do that.
Yeah, so it's certainly a skill you have to master, and it doesn't have the level of precision you need on the Wii. So, all right, that's all you've been playing, is it, Bally?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm gonna plow on and try and push to the end of Fire Emblem this week, I think.
All right. Excellent, good stuff. Well, I guess we'll move on to what I've been playing. And I think, Bally, that we're only in March. We got some time to discuss, games of the year as we go through. But I feel quite confident that I've already found my game of the year. Despite the fact that we're...
Whoa. Zelda's coming out
Despite
this
the fact that we're in the year
year.
of Zelda, of Xenoblade X, of, multiple incredible games that I hope will be incredible games when they come out. I think I found my game of the year already. And this game is called Ori and the Blind Forest. A lot of people have been talking about it lately. It's got a lot of buzz online. It was basically a Microsoft exclusive because they published it. It's an indie game originally, but Microsoft put up the money to get it on their platform. But it's also on PC, so that's where I played it. And my first encounter with Ori was actually a year ago, a little less than a year ago, at E3. Let me remind you, Bally, back during the Microsoft press conference at E3, it was so dull for me. Like, generally, I kind of force myself to watch every press conference, despite the fact that, like, I would rather stab my eyes out than watch EA Sports stuff be shown off at EA's press conference. I still sit there and watch that. Granted, I have Giant Bomb to shit on them and talk over it, so that's an added thing. But I generally watch the Microsoft press conference because it's the first one, and you gotta, I watch them all. And it was getting really boring and dull, and all these shooters were coming on. It's like, fucking, whatever, I don't want an Xbox, no one cares. And then out of nowhere, like this shining ray of golden independent game light shot through all the bullshit, and it's Ori and the Blind Forest. And this game is basically a Metroidvania, but it has one of the most gorgeous art styles I have ever seen in any video game. It is really interesting because the developers actually said during a video, maybe it was a TGS or something, or not GDC, the other one, Gamescom, because I was watching stuff like pre-release stuff last year, and one of the main guys was saying that they hand drew everything. So a lot of the time in video games they'll basically tile stuff, right? So they'll create an art asset and then they'll just tile it, just like repeat it again and again. Every single part of this game was hand drawn. So everything is unique. Every tree, every plant, just anything you can think of is a uniquely designed thing. And as a result, the game looks like this cross between a Disney movie and like a Japanese animated film. It is unreal how much it pops and how visually gorgeous it is. And I know, Bally, that's probably something that stood out to you as well, having seen footage of it.
And it's not surprising, but I mean, I've the last few episodes of this podcast, like I'm normally the one who's like, oh, art, music, art, music, and like, and this time you're the one like, oh my god, art, and like that's really good to hear, and that just shows how impressive the art is.
Yeah, it's so beautiful in motion, and that could be one thing, right? That's one aspect, but a game isn't only what it looks like. For me, I'm a mechanics-focused guy. I like, great, solid game mechanics. And the fantastic thing about Ori and the Blind Forest is it's not just a pretty looker. It is deep mechanically, hard, and so satisfying to play. So, if I just lay out the premise, you're basically this spirit, Ori, who at the start of the game, you set up this cutscene, and there's this horrible storm, and this like basically like, let's call it like the Great Deku Tree, essentially. It's like, the legend of Yggdrasil and like, the life tree or whatever. So the game is based around this tree, and a storm happens, and like the leaves, like one of the leaf falls off it, and this leaf turns out to be the spirit Ori, who like basically gets, blown into the distance and picked up by another creature in the forest. And then, the intro is very emotional. I'm not going to basically spoil any of it for you, but it's like a pretty powerful opening 10 minutes the game has, and then you kind of like start running off and going through a Metroidvania style map as this little creature Ori. It's full of loads of hidden secrets. It's full of loads of power-ups and stuff. And one of the interesting things is I think a lot of the power-ups they give you are based around how you move and terrain traversal and that kind of stuff. So there's less focus on the combat here, which is great, because if you ask me, my favorite aspects of Metroidvanias, it's not the combat. It's not, shooting down enemies with your gun. It's not, whipping people in Castlevania. It's the traversal, the exploration, and the platforming elements of it. And in Ori, they double down on the platforming elements, which I am so pleased with. A kind of comparison that I made is that one of my favorite games in terms of platforming in the last 10 years is Super Meat Boy. And obviously everyone on this show, and that my favorite Metroid game is Metroid Fusion. And I feel that Ori is this perfect blend of those two games, where the platforming is tight, precise, and concise, and like really well to control. And the exploration elements, while pretty linear, still allow you to kind of find secrets and give you the opportunity to go back afterwards, like when you're kind of finishing at the end of the game, and do like a cleanup. It almost mirrors Metro Fusion completely, in the sense that before you go into the final thing, you have a chance to go back through every area with every power-up you now have, and clear stuff and finish the 100%, which I should mention, I actually went for 100% in this game because I loved it that much. I absorbed myself in it.
And did you get to 100% then?
I did. I managed to, although the last kind of item was in the last dungeon. It was actually, there are abilities that you pick up along the way that allow you to see stuff on the map, like hidden stuff on the map. But in the last dungeon, like they basically get rid of that, and they're like, nope, none of your abilities work here, so you can't see where this hidden thing is. So I beat the game, but I also had a backup save file. Actually, this is one criticism I'll have, is that when you finish the game, it doesn't let you go back in. It doesn't let you go back in and run around again. It's like, this is a completed save file. It's like, God's sake. But I was reading Gaff a lot. I was reading the NeoGAF thread, and people were saying make a backup save. So technically, I don't have a completed save file of the finished game, but I did in the other save file go back and get the last one. So I'm going to call it a technicality, Bally, but I'm going to say that it does
Fair
count.
enough.
I'm going to say it does count. But as we were going back to again talking about art and music are your two constants. The music in this game is tremendous as well. And you know me, I am way more prone to listening to podcasts while I play these kind of 2D games. Even when I was going back and doing cleanup for extra items, I kept my headphones on and I just listened to that soundtrack. And I've had it playing on Spotify. I've just absorbed that stuff. It is tremendous. It's so orchestral and so grand and epic. And really, like, when I think about this game, I think like this is one of the most AAA style Metroidvanias that I've ever seen. And like in this day and age, that doesn't happen a lot. Microsoft put a lot of money behind this, behind Moon Studios, who are the developer, to help them make it and realize it as this grand thing. And like aside from Nintendo, no one does it anymore. Nintendo doesn't do it anymore. They don't put big budgets behind these type of games, and so we never get to see them. So it's so refreshing and so fantastic to have like this kind of fantastic looking and sounding and playing game in every respect. It's great. So,
do you think maybe games like this will make Nintendo kind of think, hey, we've not really done a Metroidvania game in however long. We could make a AAA polished Metroidvania game that would be incredible, just as good as Ori. Let's do it. Do you think games like this change their mindset at all?
I honestly don't know. It's you think about when was the last time Nintendo released a Metroid game? It was Zero Mission, 2D Metroid
Zero
game.
Mission, which has just come out on Virtual Console, and it's like over 10 years old.
Yeah. And man, I don't know what they want to do with that franchise and what they're going to do with it, but just like seeing stuff like this almost, and I said this to you while I was playing it, it almost makes me be like having no care at all whether Nintendo does or doesn't. Because quite frankly, the indie community is providing those experiences when Nintendo won't. This game Axiom Verge is coming out very soon on PS4, looks incredible, and by all accounts is going to be fantastic.
And that's definitely far more Metroid-y than...
Yeah, that's way more Metroid-inspired. I mean, there are lots of different aspects to Ori, which I haven't touched on yet, and I maybe want to talk about a little bit, like the fact that one of the main core abilities is called Bash, and what it does is allows you to kind of freeze time on an enemy and basically fling yourself in one direction while flinging the enemy in the other. But it's way more kind of deep than that, is the fact that if enemies shoot projectiles at you, you can basically use the bash on them and springboard yourself in one direction and have the enemy's projectile go back at them. So basically fight them with their own projectile. You can use it to just climb areas and get through areas by bashing off enemies. There are parts of the game where the floor is spikes and the roof above you is spikes. And the only way to get through it is to use a combination of your jumping and your bash ability to kind of like flick your way through and get through this area by just bouncing through projectiles and enemies that are in your way. And it's so satisfying. It's so mechanically sound and interesting. And I've never quite seen a mechanic like it in a game before. And it kind of provides the basis for Ori's quote-unquote boss fights, because instead of, focusing on the combat, as I said, the way you kill enemies is a combination of using your abilities. There's like a downward bash, like I don't know, like a ground pound, as it were, like in Mario, ground pound. You have your bash abilities, I said before, and you can also, throw projectiles back at them. But you also have like this kind of little spirit that shoots beams out, but you don't have to direct the beams. You don't have, control over where they go. You just kind of point in a direction and it will automatically lock on. It's almost like Metroid Other M system where like there's no way you can focus on anything unless you're in first person mode, and that you're just running along and just tapping the shoot button. So it feels like that in a sense, but it works because they will put you in situations, for example, like there are enemies like stuck to walls, like slugs, which are like just sliding on walls, and you have to wall jump around them, but you want to kill them at the same time. So you're focusing on like wall jumping while also shooting. So it gives you kind of more focus in those situations. And yeah, I was about to start talking about those boss fights, and then I didn't. But instead of boss fights, what they have are these escape sequences, which are just absolutely thrilling. You have to basically use your abilities to, the example that I give is the first one. You're in this giant tree, and essentially, to end to get out of the area, you have to rush to the top while a torrent of water is kind of rushing up beneath you. And there's time pressure. It's really, really, you have to be really precise, and you can't fuck up at one point. And it's so hard, and a lot of people have been frustrated by those, but they are immensely satisfying and super well designed. So, yeah, look, I'm gushing, Bally.
And that whole idea of platforming under pressure and escaping, that's very Metroid Fusion.
Yeah, it is, and it's also very Super Meat Boy. And the other thing, like the kind of point of comparison you can make here is you can save wherever you want. Like, it gives you control over the save system. So you can just basically, you have a certain number of orbs that you charge them up, and then you can place a save wherever. And you're going to do this a lot, where you get to a section and you treat it like a focused kind of platforming level almost, that you're going to bash your head against the wall a couple times, but you'll eventually get it. And then as soon as you're through it, you're like, okay, right, I need to save again to make sure I don't go through that again. Because otherwise, if I die later down the road, if I'm going for 10 minutes and I forget to save, well, that's 10 minutes of progress lost. So it's on you to, focus on it and make sure you're not screwing up. So yeah, it demands a lot, but I think it is worthwhile of that. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of quite good at these games, so I don't have too much trouble with them.
Yeah, you blitzed through it, didn't you? I mean, Brad Shoemaker on Giant Bomb said really great players will finish it in 6 hours, and normal players are going to finish it in about 12 hours. And I think you said you did it in about 7.
I did 7.5 hours, and I also 100%ed it. So yeah.
I mean, I think that's shows a lot of your gaming ability for Metroidvania, MBZ.
Yeah, and like I was reading the NeoGAF thread, people were mad at those escape sequences to the point at which they're like, "Oh, if you do a sequel, take these out." I'm like, "No, don't do that. These are fucking awesome. These are like the best part of the game. I fucking love these. Do not remove them from the game. They are amazing." So I'm
sure
really...
there might be a silent majority with that.
Yeah, there may well be. There may well be. But look, I've gushed. I've said my piece here, Bally. Ori and the Blind Forest is, it's beyond words.
I need to buy an Xbox One.
You need to buy a PC. You need to buy a PC, quite honestly. You'll get more benefit from that. So yeah, I don't know where to go from here, Bally. But I guess we'll talk a little bit about my other game that I was playing and I actually beat, which is Mega Man 3. Last year, played Mega Man 2 through, and that was a lot of fun. I love that game to death. Mega Man 3 is hard. I'm going to say it right now, Mega Man 3 is one of the hardest games I've ever fucking played in my life, and it's a miracle that I am sitting here today having completed it. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the save state system and being able to use and abuse those, but you saw me play the Yellow Devil. I put the YouTube video of that up.
I did.
Yes. That was a trial, right? That game is hard. And I think the interesting wrinkle that they add to Mega Man 3 is the slide. So you don't have this in the 2 previous games, but in Mega Man 3, you can now slide under enemies and under projectiles, and that's a really key thing that you need to get into your head and figure out. And I don't think I ever really managed to figure it out, and that was my problem. I was playing quite a lot in a Mega Man 2 mindset, and so trying to figure out the fact that you need to use and abuse this slide as much as possible wasn't kind of clicking with me. I don't think it fully clicked ever, and kind of probably made it much harder for me because I wasn't using the game design as it was supposed to be used. But the real trouble in any Mega Man game, I feel, is, the first couple of bosses, because you don't have any, like, weaknesses to go after. You don't have any abilities of your own. You have to just use the P shooter, the Mega Buster, and do it like that. And for the longest time, I believe I started this game. I picked it up in maybe November of last year after I'd played Mega Man 2, just to, just give it a bash. And I couldn't kill any Robot Masters. I just tried and tried and tried and couldn't. And, eventually I decided, I'm going to bang my head against the wall against Magnet Man. Magnet Man seems like I could beat him pretty well, but it would take focus. And I eventually finally broke through and did it. And, after that, pieces started falling into line. I would, get the power up that, would beat the next Robot Master and go again and do that. And it started to, get a bit better, but it was still hard. And then what happens is after you beat the 8 Robot Masters is you fight the 8 Robot Masters from Mega Man 2 again, but you also have to go through stages that are not only way more difficult, but way longer, because those stages have 2 bosses in each of them. So you get through like this really tough stuff, get to one of the Mega Man 2 bosses, then beat him, then go to another really hard part of a stage and get to a second one. Those are by far the hardest levels in any game I've ever played. Jesus fucking Christ, they are tough. And, I understand and realize that people at the time when, this game was new, it was like the only game they had for the whole year, and they'd play it again and again, and they'd get really good at it, and they'd know enemy patterns, they'd know placement, they'd know all that stuff, and they'd be able to breeze through it. But for someone nowadays coming to Mega Man 3, dear God, you have something in line for you, because this game is punishing Bally. So,
are you ready for the next ones then?
I don't know. I'm not sure where to go past this. But I was talking to you about the idea how when Mega Man 2 came out in the West, it had a normal and a hard mode, and the reason for that was because the Japanese thought that Western gamers were not good enough. They were too shit at video games to be able to beat the original Mega Man 2.
We kind of are, but yeah.
We are. As I'm proving right now by talking about how shit I am at Mega Man 3. But, in Japan, difficult was the only difficulty. There was no difficulty setting for Mega Man 2. When they brought it to the West, they added the normal mode, which made it way easier for us, and that's why Mega Man 2 is, I think, way more playable and way easier in general. I think a lot of people say it's the easiest Mega Man game.
It's still hard.
It's still hard, but it's definitely the easiest Mega Man game. When Mega Man 3 came out, there's no difficulty setting. So what I assume happened is they decided, fuck it, we're just going to go with this standard difficulty for everyone. And it's hard. Oh, my God. But I really enjoyed it. I think Mega Man 3 is really one of those kind of gems of the NES era, and certainly I feel still way more playable than stuff like the original Legend of Zelda and Metroid and those games. As I've said before, I think Mega Man by far is the most playable NES franchise to this date. So I'm glad I played it. It's also kind of interesting because the end game of this is way fucking easier. I beat the boss on my first try, partly because I was abusing the weapons that were super effective on him, but also, like, I don't know, it just, the way that it's set up makes it easier for you to clear it out. So I basically ran through it once. There are 4 stages to the last Wily, and it actually wasn't too difficult for me. So I guess I could be thankful for the fact that it kind of let up at the end and was like, you've beat the Yellow Devil. That was a chore and a challenge for you. Here's the home stretch. Enjoy it. And I did. And yeah, I'm glad I now have 2 Mega Mans under my belt. I'm looking forward this year to Mighty Number 9, which is the spiritual successor to Mega Man, made by his original creator Keiji Inafune, who left Capcom, made a Kickstarter, and Mighty Number 9 is coming out this year. It will be on Wii U, Bally. So I'm expecting
that's pretty exciting.
I'm expecting that you will be interested in it as well. It looks super cool. So I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point in 2015. And it may be a Game of the Year contender, just like Ori and the Blind Forest.
This year for Game of the Year is already heating up.
Well, Uncharted 4 got pushed, so there's one Titan out the way.
They got scared of Zelda, They were like, "Oh no, we can't come out at the same time as Zelda. That'd be suicide."
I don't think so. Well, anyway, Bally, we've talked a hell of a lot about these damn video games. How about we scoot off into our next segment, talk about some emails.
About that?
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere, though, because we'll be right back with some of your emails.
Welcome back to the second segment of the show. We have lots of emails ready to go, but before we start, I just wanted to say we've got a brand new email address. The brand new email address is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We're slowly going to wind down our old email account and start up this one, so make sure you send all your emails there. We're running out as always, so keep them coming, keep them coming. We always want more. So I'm going to go straight ahead with the first question, which is from John. Hey Emblem and Bally, I'm currently playing Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Xenoblade Chronicles, and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. I can't decide what I should complete first, and I often find myself playing each of them at random. What order do you think I should finish them in? And do you have any tips for focusing on one game? I'm a pretty new listener to the podcast. I've been listening for 2 months at the time of writing this, and I hope that I can write in more. Thank you for reading this. That's John from the United States.
As many of our listeners are indeed from the US.
If you're from the United States, you got to tell us which state. That's what
Oh God, Bally, you're always about like getting into the minutiae.
Well,
you know, you're trying to stalk our listeners here.
It says Bally from Europe.
Yeah, it says, yeah, okay, alright. Point made, point made. Okay, alright. Not quite the same, but we don't want to start any US, UK
Oh,
here
you
about
get a
it.
little Ryder Cup on the go right here.
I don't know. So yeah, it's a good question. When you have a lot of long games, which one do you go in for? How do you focus it? So what do we got on the table? We've got Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Xenoblade, and Paper Mario. That's 2 RPGs and 2 long-ass Zelda games. What do you think is the focus that should be placed on the games here, Bally?
I like, and I think you're the one who sort of trained me into this, but I like playing a long game at the same time as a short game, because you're constantly able to swap between the two, so you're not just playing the same one game. But if you're tackling a long game like a Xenoblade or a Fire Emblem like I'm doing just now, it's much more fun to go away from it and play something else and shorter frequently, and then mix that up, and then so you always got 2 games on the go at once. So in your
you also
situation,
feel like you're making an accomplishment by
Yes.
beating other games, so you're not like stuck in the rut of like I haven't beaten a game forever because I'm just playing this really long one. So
Exactly.
It helps. It helps.
So
speed
you're
that
always
along.
progressing it, and I mean, in your situation, I'd play one of the Zeldas alongside either Xenoblade or Paper Mario because they're longer games.
Well, they're all long games, so I don't know if your suggestions are...
Well, Xenoblade's much longer than the Zeldas for sure. So, and I don't really know how long Paper Mario is, but
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like time context right now, I think Xenoblade should probably be your focus. And the reason I say that is because of the imminent release of its follow-up on Wii U. And I don't know if you own a Wii U or not. None of these games that he's listed are Wii U games, but potentially if he really likes Xenoblade, then he can roll straight into the sequel afterwards. So that is a thing. But it also begs the question, like, should you be playing a really long JRPG only to follow it up with another even longer JRPG?
yeah.
I don't know, but he seems to be, in the business of playing long games anyway. Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door, I think is pretty short as far as RPGs go. It's one of, the Mario style RPG games, and so it's probably a shorter one. So maybe that alongside Skyward Sword to get some variety, because you don't want to be playing 2 RPGs at the same time. Otherwise, you're kind of getting genre fatigue, and that's something that I feel like you also want to avoid, is try and play games from different genres, so you're always doing different things, and switching it up. But I think, yeah, you can't really go wrong with any of these games. I think they're all pretty fantastic, and I'm sure you'd agree, Bally. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've not played a couple of them, but I do plan on playing Xenoblade very soon and look forward to it.
Yeah, and I think at one point you should play a Mario RPG
Yeah, I
game.
agree. I'm not
Either
sure which
either one of the Paper Mario games. Actually, what would be really great is for you to play the original Paper Mario on N64. I've watched an LP of it a long time ago, and it's a really cool RPG. And I think it's available on the Wii Virtual Console.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if Nintendo get in gear and release the N64 games, that will be on the Wii U store, and you'll be able to play it there. But we'll see how that rolls out. But certainly for the future, one to look out for.
Our
So yeah.
next email is from Colin. Hello, my name is Colin. Are there any Nintendo crossovers you would want to see actually happen? For instance, I see all the time on Tumblr a lot of Pokemon Animal Crossing crossover fan arts where instead of animals, the villagers are Pokemon. I don't know about you guys, but I would love to see the game actually happen. Love the podcast. So we should also say that Colin attached a lot of these pictures to the email. Which they all look really funny, don't they? Those Pokemon
Yeah, they look
villagers.
great. I love the art style this artist has used, and basically taking the villager styling and putting the Pokemon likenesses over the top of them. And it works really well, surprisingly. And I don't know, it's something that I could see happening potentially. And I guess this gives us a good opportunity to talk about how Nintendo are kind of smashifying their franchises as it seems right now. The most obvious example being Mario Kart, where, they're putting Link in, they're putting the villager in, they're having loads of different tracks from different games, the F-Zero kart's in there. It really does look like they're moving towards a smashification of that franchise, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do it with a lot more of them because I
Do you think they could do it with like a sports game?
yeah, like you know that a lot of the Mario Golf and tennis they're all just that singular universe, but Nintendo totally could branch out, and I think it would widen the appeal as well and make it feel more interesting if you add franchises like Animal Crossing, Zelda, Pokemon, all these different ones, and throw them together.
I'm
And really,
just
like,
sorry. I was just imagining Samus Aran, sorry, just playing tennis with her
oh God,
with her gun, but then to serve the ball, she just shoots a tennis ball.
that's great. Bali, you can't not have this happen
That'd
now.
be
This has to
so
happen.
much fun. Yeah.
This has to happen.
And they
Oh
just
my
make a
God,
really
that's brilliant.
satisfying, like, plump noise as it shoots
Just
out.
loads the tennis balls into her arm cannon. That's
Yeah,
bloody brilliant. That is
Anyway,
awesome.
sorry, I interrupted. You were going to say something.
No, I mean, like, sure. I mean, that's the great thing about these Nintendo characters is, like, they all fit so well together. I feel often Nintendo are compared to Marvel in the sense that they have all these well-known characters that can combine and be in the same universe and work well together. So yeah, I totally see a future where this stuff happens. And there's loads of rumors all the time. You remember that one time before E3, Bally, where there was a rumored crossover between Star Fox and
Yeah.
Metroid, and people were going crazy because that sounded like an insanely awesome thing. And obviously, it turned out to be false because maybe a little bit too much on the crazy side. But I definitely feel that Nintendo's current situation requires them to do really weird, crazy stuff, and throwing characters into universes that they don't usually belong in is something that could help, liven stuff up and change it. So, absolutely, I would see that potentially happening.
Yeah,
So,
completely agree.
all
Um,
right.
right, yeah, on to the final question this week from Tho. Hi, I'm MBZ and Bally. Greetings from Norway. I'm a long time listener and have been enjoying the podcast tremendously. Keep up the good work. But my question is, what is your favorite game genre, and are there any genres you guys haven't tried yet? Also, MBZ, while listening to the podcast, I've played a lot of games that you've recommended, including Rogue Legacy, VVVVVV, Shovel Knight, Gunman Clive, Metroid Fusion, and then he says, I bought Xenoblade Chronicles for my friend's birthday, secretly so I could play it myself when he was done with it.
Ah, very sneaky.
And lastly, I borrowed Fire Emblem Awakening from that same friend. And then also for MBZ, after watching your video on your 5 favourite Metroidvania games, I would like you to try my favourite in the genre, Cave Story. You can get it on either the 3DS eShop or Steam. I would really appreciate it if you gave it a try. Keep up the good work.
All right. Very good to have Scandinavian listeners, as we love those indie platforms we mentioned so many times. So let's start with his main question, which is what's our favorite game genre? Bally, how about you go first?
Oof, oof, oof. I mean, traditionally it was driving games, but now it's not really at all. And I think we even might have had a question similar to this in the past, and I really did struggle because I think I do love a good 2D platformer, but I mean, I think my favorite is adventure style games, and whether that's a two-dimensional adventure with something like a 2D Metroid, or even a 3D Metroid, or a 3D Zelda, or a 2D Zelda. I just those styles of adventure games where there's might be a bit of platforming. There's a lot of discovery, exploration, boss fights. Those are the things I love. Unlockable weapons. Those kind of things that Metroid and Zelda hold so dear. Are probably my favorite genres. And whether you define that as adventure game or something different, I don't know. But those are definitely probably my favorite genre.
Hmm. I'm not sure they're in the same genre officially.
They're
but
quite similar, right?
We'll count it, I guess. I don't know. For me, I've always been a big fan of platformers, just like you, Bally. I, in recent years, have got very much into JRPGs. I think JRPGs are a genre that I really love now at this point. I'm trying a lot of new ones and branching out. I'm playing Persona right now, which I haven't talked at all about on the podcast because it's fucking long and it's going to take me a while. But I adore that game and I think it's fantastic. Obviously Xenoblade. But, as I was talking at the start of the show about Ori and the Blind Forest and how much that game is just so incredible. The 2D Metroidvania style is my favorite, and I think that's like completely realized. Like one of my favorite games the last 5 years is Guacamelee, and now Ori and the Blind Forest. And Nintendo don't make these games anymore, but so many indie developers do, and I just love them. I love them, and like there's nothing like give me a map with squares, give me upgrades, give me running about, exploring, hitting things, and I'm in. And that's my favorite genre, no doubt. Metroidvania. It's again debatable if you can count it as a genre, but fucking Jeremy Parish made it up, and I am going to run with it. So there we have it. Other question was, are there any game genres we haven't tried? I think probably a lot more for you than for me, Bally, but the most predominant ones are probably like real-time strategy and
you
like
need to try Pikmin. That's what you need to try.
Well, it's not really traditional real-time strategy.
I'm not saying it is, but you still need to try it.
And I think the other one, like a lot of people are talking about City Skylines right now. I think the city builder kind of sim-based kind of game is one that I've never played, and like grand strategy and that kind of stuff. More PC-focused, like overhead isometric kind of, Age of Empires style sort of thing, which, I don't know, I've never really played many of those. I know you had that one Gungan game on PC that you played, which was kind of one of those styles, but
what did you call that style?
I don't know.
It's like almost a simmy kind of game.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know.
weird.
Sim City style stuff.
I used to play a lot of SimCity on PC, on my good old laptop. But yeah, no, a genre that I've never really delved into that I'm about to is definitely JRPG.
Aside from Pokemon, you've never played any JRPG.
You just said it's a big favorite of yours, and I'm definitely keen to just try out Xenoblade. I'm just going to give it my all, try and complete it, see if I enjoy it. If I don't, then I don't know. I'm not going to necessarily play a ton more, but we'll see how I like it. And like last year, Assassin's Creed 4, as I've said numerous times on this show, was very much outside my comfort zone, and I absolutely loved that. So I would like to give more open world games a go. Other genres I've not really tried. I was going to say, you're not very experienced in the good old driving genre, MBZ.
No, well, I mean, I've tried them, though. I've played them and I've owned them, so I couldn't really count it as ones that I haven't played or tried before. I think first-person shooters for you, because though you've played Metroid Prime, it's not really a first-person shooter.
No. I don't know how I would go about doing that.
No.
You've not tried the Mario sports games?
Come on, Pally, that's not a genre.
They're definitely
Mario
a genre.
sports games isn't a genre.
The number of hours I've sunk into
I'll give you sports games, but I have played a lot of sport games before. I've owned FIFA games and I've played cricket games, and Yeah, so
Very, very
they don't
bad.
count as stuff I haven't tried. So, and this is the question he's asking, stuff we haven't tried yet. So,
I'll find a chink in your armor.
well, I don't know. Well, maybe
There
you won't.
must be something in there. Just can't think
Yeah,
of
and
it
he
right
also
now.
mentions about Cave Story, which I actually downloaded the demo for on the Wii, and I didn't really enjoy the demo for Cave Story. Everyone loves Cave Story. Maybe it's, it was a long time ago, and I wasn't, I guess, as experienced with playing those games then as I am now. So maybe I'll jump to Cave Story at some point. But the first impression I got of Cave Story is I didn't really like it. So I don't know. Can't really evangelize it, unfortunately, as much as this guy seems to really love the game. So
But
there you
that's
go.
really cool, though, that you got into all those games from the podcast. I think that's really cool. Shovel Knight,
Yeah,
Gunman Clive, VVVVV, Rogue Legacy, Metroid Fusion, and Xenoblade Chronicles. I think that's really awesome.
that's fantastic. And I have there's a few people who say to me like, yeah, I picked this up because you had talked about it on the podcast. That's awesome. That's like one of the best things to hear about is that our discussions here and our evangelizing of certain things cause people to go out there and try them out. So really happy with that. So thank you very much for doing so. And we'll continue to talk about cool games, and hopefully you will play them and take our advice. So
Excellent.
there
Well,
we
I
go.
think that's all we've got time for this second segment. But like I said at the start, do keep all your emails coming. We have the new email address, which is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Send all your emails there. Comments on games, questions. What are you playing just now? Do tell us. We'd like to try and get through as many emails as possible each show, so send them our way. But yeah, that's all we've got time for on the second segment. Come back in a second when we've got a bit of a news roundup.
Alright, everyone, welcome back to the final part of today's show. And as we mentioned at the start, we are talking about two oh so secret things. Which, for some reason, Bally, is just being weird about. I don't know why. But, Bally, how about you lift the curtain for the one person who doesn't know what's happening?
Well, the first announcement, because we got to keep the other announcements secret,
Oh, come on! Don't do this!
is Nintendo are doing mobile games.
Yes. So, let me give you the context of how I found this news out. So, this was kind of the press conference got announced like 2 hours before it took place. So I think a lot of the press were kind of scrambling because people like wondering what's happening. Nintendo are holding this press conference with this company DNA, who are this big Japanese mobile developer, and everyone's like, oh god, what's happening? And obviously, at this time, this is when people should be buying stock, right? People should have been on the market being like, fucking scoop as much Nintendo stock as you can, because after this, like, it's shooting through the roof. And I'm sure some people made off pretty well. I was actually reading a NeoGAF thread, and people were saying, "Yep, sold all my Nintendo stock, made a nice buck on that one." So I was like, "Wow, you were smart." But basically, I woke up, and as you know, Bali, every morning I have my ritual where
Mm-hmm.
I have to go to the toilet and take a shit to
Yeah.
put it in not very delicate terms.
Yeah.
So usually when I do that, I'm listening to a podcast and I'm just flicking through Twitter, catching up on what happened, like in the US evening
It's the
time.
daily roundup.
Yeah, well, kind of, yeah, the previous evening roundup, I guess, in the morning, and like, checking Gaff and stuff. And I'm on Twitter, and I'm like, well, people are talking about Nintendo streaming. There's a press conference. There's a mobile, something mobile, and like I click through and find the YouTube video, and there was actually a YouTube video of the press conference happening, but with a translator like dubbed over the top of it. Clearly, this was for like their English investors so that they could, understand what was happening, what was being said. But it was just being streamed on YouTube, and like the majority of people who are watching this are not watching it as investors; they're watching it as Nintendo fans, wondering what the hell's happening. So I'm just like sitting there, like hearing this, and it's just like it's so fucking crazy because like the last thing I expected to wake up to is a Nintendo press conference where they announce they are starting to do mobile games. And yeah, it's kind of surreal. Like it was super surreal. It was also really bad because that day I had to like hardcore get a good start on my essay, and the whole fucking day I was just like, God, I just want to look at NeoGAF and read Twitter and like just read what people are saying and listen to podcasts and stuff. But like had to draw myself away and work on my essay instead. So, oh dear, it was a bit of a moment there. And then you texted me like midway through the day about it, and I was like, yep. I'm sure Bally's going to be happy about it.
Oh,
so, Bally, how about if we break down what actually got announced? Do you want to take the lead on this?
Well, I think you know the facts a lot more clearly than I do, but yeah, so they've basically given this Japanese mobile company, DNA, the rights to make original games using any Nintendo IP, as far as I am aware.
Right. Well, we should make clear that DNA are not going to be the ones making the games.
Okay.
Nintendo made explicit that they are the ones creating the games. So that's something that we can kind of rest easy about because people are looking at DNA and kind of figuring out what they do as a company, and they're very big on the free-to-play space. So they take that business model and they run with it a lot of the time. And I can't remember what podcast it was. I was listening to one. They were saying that they do a lot of kind of clone games where there are games like Clash of Clans and shit that already exist, and they kind of just make free-to-play clone versions of those and just publish a ton of them. And it doesn't look like the highest of quality stuff on their end, which is why I'm really happy that it's not them who are making the games. The thing with DNA is they are being basically contracted, well, not contracted, but jointly working with Nintendo, because what happened was they now each own part of the company. DNA owns 1 point something percent of Nintendo. Nintendo owns 10% of DNA. That's basically the exact same monetary exchange is taken on, but because Nintendo is a vastly bigger company than DNA, they only get 1% of the share, as opposed to 10. And Nintendo are actually now, I think, the second biggest stockholder in their company. So the way that it's going to work really is that DNA are handling the distribution and all the stuff on the mobile end. Nintendo are going to be developing the games, and that seems to be like how it's going to go. So I don't know, Bally. What I know. Obviously, last week we talked a little bit about this and how we didn't think that this
thought
was
it wasn't
really
going to happen. Yeah.
No,
not anytime soon.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are your kind of initial thoughts here?
Really, really negative, and mainly it's just the issue that I am just not a iOS gamer, a mobile gamer at all in that sense. I just cannot stand touchscreen games like that you're using your fingers. It's just not a great idea, and it's a real shame that Nintendo have given in to this market pressure, because that's what it is. It is market pressure. The whole world is moving to this iOS format. All the games are on there now, and like so many young people aren't buying 3DSs or even PS Vitas or any of that other handheld stuff. They're just playing games on these mobile devices, and that's unfortunately where the emerging market is, and it's a shame all around.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, see, here's the thing. Like, the one way that I feel positive about this is Nintendo are a company who I trust implicitly when it comes to software, right? They consistently, no matter how badly their hardware does or how many issues they have concerning online or concerning infrastructure and those kind of things, if you're talking about game software, there is not a single more consistent company when it comes to quality of software than Nintendo. Like, no one, absolutely no one. And so, when it comes to like creating amazing, innovative, interesting games, they are always, the top dog. They always do so well. And so when it comes to this new market that they're approaching, I feel kind of intrigued in a way as to how they're going to approach gaming on smartphones. And they have explicitly said they're not bringing virtual console titles. They're not bringing legacy titles to these platforms because, frankly, using virtual D-pad and buttons is goddamn horrible, and it is not a good way to play. And Iwata said as much, that if they did such a thing, it would be damaging to their IP. And I 100% agree with him. I think that, that sort of stuff that they try and shove out there is not good, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, those platforms aren't built to control in that way, so why force it?
I think that a lot of young people who play exclusively mobile games are perfectly happy with these virtual D-pads and things. I think it's only people like us who are used to the real D-pads and the real, circle pads, etc., that have a problem with it.
Yeah, and I kind of cite my cousin,
my
young cousin Jake, who plays FIFA consistently on the iPad.
Oh my god!
With virtual buttons, and he seems to have no problem with it whatsoever. He, finds it really easy to play, and I don't understand it. There's like no haptic feedback. You're not getting any tactileness.
He would happily play, Pokemon with a D-pad, a virtual D-pad, and virtual buttons, wouldn't he?
Yeah, probably. So, I mean, the good thing that they have said that they're not doing that. So the real interesting part is, what are they going to do then? Because if anyone is going to come up with some new crazy thing, some game concept in the iOS market, it's going to be Nintendo. I feel like they take every aspect of a device and kind of scrutinize it. Granted, these devices aren't made by them, so it will be interesting to see if they succeed or not with this, because I do kind of get the sense with Nintendo that their hardware is built for the game ideas that they have, right? We've seen it so many times with Wii Sports on the Wii, with, Nintendogs and Brain Age and all that stuff on DS, and, obviously Canvas Curse was a big one too. Like, loads of these experiences are built because their hardware allows that stuff. But you also have to remember, and a very interesting point that someone brought up, the two main inputs on phone games are touch and movement, right? So gyro and touchscreens. Who were the first people to bring touchscreen gaming to us? Nintendo. Who were the first people to bring motion-based gaming to us? Nintendo. So, like, they have vast experience in both of these fields, and there are, multitude of ways that they can apply game concepts to those inputs. And, there are a few that we could throw out there. Obviously, WarioWare is a fantastic one.
I was about to say WarioWare would work for this, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And, a lot of people cite WarioWare Twisted as the best entry in that franchise. You can totally do a Twisted-style game on smartphones, and it would work really well. Stuff like Rhythm Heaven, people have been saying as well. Those are the sort of, ground level things that I think would be excellent. It's just a case of, I'm not sure Wario and WarioWare is their strongest or most well-known IP, so maybe they would stick the Mario name onto a WarioWare-style game,
Oof.
Trying to leverage their, those ideas, but with a stronger brand, potentially. We could see something like that.
I think we have to see something Pokemon-related. It's just...
Well, okay, here's the interesting thing with Pokemon, because I'm not sure if I showed you this NeoGAF post, but for a long time, and I still really don't understand how Pokemon works in terms of ownership, because there are three entities involved. There is Nintendo, there is Game Freak, and there's Creatures Inc. There's also the Pokemon Company, who technically aren't actual owners of the franchise, but oversee a lot of distribution and merchandising and stuff. So The whole situation with Pokemon is that they already have Pokemon apps on iOS. There are over 10 of them, in fact. Like, one of them's a Pokedex one of them's like a map, one of them's like a trainer guide. They have already dabbled in this market. So when it comes to Pokemon, it seems like the control there is given to Game Freak and Creatures Inc. as well as Nintendo, so they can kind of go off and do their own thing as well. But the question is whether Nintendo would, want to take Pokemon and put it on smartphones, like in the traditional sense. Obviously, Pokemon Shuffle is a thing that's currently on 3DS, and I have no doubt that something like that will be coming, to
Yeah.
iOS and Android as soon as they possibly can do it.
That's going to be the day when these candy crushing women next to me on the tube, I'm going to look over and they're going to be lining up Pikachu heads or something on their phone, and I'm going to be like, oh my god, Nintendo has cracked it. Like,
Yeah.
this is really bad and really positive at the same time.
It is, yeah. So I don't know. It's all very up in the air right now. There's lots of factors that we could talk about how this will impact them. Currently in the short term, at least, as I said, their stock has fucking skyrocketed. Like, there's a thread on Gaff showing, the bar chart of how much it's gone up is like 30% or something ridiculous. Very clearly, Nintendo stockholders, they're happy, right? They've been fulfilled at this point. And they kind of, finally, like kind of crying toddlers, they have been in their pen for years and years, and they won't fucking shut up about it. And finally, Nintendo have basically given them the lollipop they're asking for. And now they're sucking on it and just loving it, I'll tell you. But I don't know, it's really interesting. I'm going to try and find a quote here, but Iwata did kind of make, like, Nintendo's a company, and Iwata and his stance on this has made it kind of a big U-turn on the whole situation. Because I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it now, but he did say before, Nintendo's decision to not go into smartphone gaming may be a thing in 20 years which we'll look back on and say, that's why our company is still going. He was very, very anti going in that direction, against the shareholders' wishes and all that stuff. And they were in a precarious situation 2 years ago, and I think they're in a really, even worse one right now. And it seems like their hand has been forced. They have to like do a U-turn on this and change their tune. And before they were talking about like making a Nintendo app and trying to get people to their physical platform, their physical hardware, and trying to push new fans and create brand awareness, right? Because they have really strong IPs, but at this point, when you think about kids nowadays, how many of them really know Mario better than they know Minecraft? You think about like the big no names at this point in time in gaming are not Zelda, is not, I guess Pokemon still to a degree, but like it's definitely diminished from, in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, Mario's not, he's a big name, but he's not a big name in that really young market.
Yeah, we're not, in the early 90s where Mario was a more recognizable figure than Mickey Mouse. He's a far cry from that at this point, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and they seem to be going whole hog at it. They seem to be like, diving in, and they fully intend to make bucket loads of cash off of this. And this kind of dovetails into the discussion about Nintendo potentially cannibalizing themselves and eating their own tail. What do you think, Bally, in terms of if they are successful with phone games and they make a bunch of money out of that? Do they kind of end up losing their console business as a result? Does this become their main source of revenue?
I suggested that that they would end up cannibalizing themselves a bit on the last episode, but from what they've said, these games are going to be so different to the core IPs, the main games on the 3DS, Wii U, etc., that it shouldn't hurt too much, and hopefully attract more gamers away from iOS and to the main systems, where obviously Nintendo will probably make more money.
Yeah, but I mean, you kind of think about that, and you're like, how many people will actually do that? You think they're not going to convert your casual iOS person, because your casual iOS person doesn't care about video games not in the mainstream sense, but in like the sense that we care about them, right? Like, a video game is something that is just on their phone when they're bored, and they don't go anywhere, further than that. Like, take my sister, for example. She doesn't really play games at all, and she hardly plays games on her phone. If she does, it's like, the casual Temple Run or some quiz game or whatever. Like, the fact that she if she downloads, say, I don't know, a Pokemon style game and tries it out and like enjoys it or whatever, that doesn't mean shit. Like, she's not going to go out there and spend money on a Nintendo console just to play. Like, it's just a thing that's on her phone that she kind of enjoys now and again. I
Yeah.
think like that is so much of the market there that it seems a little naive from Nintendo, from my perspective, to hope and place bets on people, coming over to their systems as a result of playing on iOS. I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel about it.
No, that's
So
true. But I would suggest that someone younger than your sister could be more impressionable and
true.
might
Yeah. No,
move
you're very
across.
right when it comes to the young audience on phones and tablets. My young cousin, for example, as we cited many times, he, it's not likely that his parents would ever buy him something like that, but when he eventually gets his own source of money at some point to be able to do that, maybe, yeah, it's I don't know. At the very least, the nice thing about this is when I am in London and they are playing on the iPad and they're doing all these horrible games that I think are just trash, I can point them towards a Nintendo game and say, look at this. This is really cool. This is, a Mario thing. He has familiarity with Mario because of me and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's hopefully what I'm really looking for is Nintendo to put out polished, really thoughtful,
They're reaching
interesting,
out.
fun
Yeah.
games. Yeah, into the iOS space, and potentially doing well there.
Well, we'll see. It is exciting, but I'm still not overly happy about it for sure.
Another thing we didn't really touch on, which we can kind of, this is part of the other announcement, but Nintendo announced that DNA would be handling the new membership service, which I guess is going to be the replacement for Club Nintendo, which they said is going to be accessible across tablets, phones, PCs, 3DS, Wii U, and Bally. Drum roll for the next reveal.
PS4.
Yeah, that's it. PS4,
Whoa.
Sony are getting better with Nintendo. It's crazy. That was the
Yeah.
biggest news. No, Bally, what actually is happening?
They have announced the NX.
So what is NX though? That
I
is,
have no bloody idea.
well, at the very least, it's the code name. As we know, Nintendo and many other companies like their code names for their devices. GameCube, often referred to as Dolphin, and that's why the emulator is called Dolphin, because that was its code name. Lot of different ones. DS famously kept its code name and was never renamed. And Wii U Cafe and so NX. What does it mean? What is it going to be? This is very exciting, although not really, because we don't know anything about it and probably won't know
Yeah.
for another year because Nintendo said they're not talking about it until 2016. But I don't know. It's really interesting because everyone knows that console hardware is being worked on. It's not like it should be a surprise to people because Sony are working on the PS5 right now. Microsoft are working on the next Xbox. Like that's just a fact. That's how R&D works. Everyone is living in the future.
But you said was it Iwata said that this is a new, like it's a new device and that it's not going to have the name Wii or the name DS in it, right?
No, he didn't explicitly say that.
Oh, he didn't say that.
He just said that the console itself would be a brand new concept.
A brand
That
new
was
concept.
Right, that
So
was his wording.
in my
We
mind,
should-
that does suggest it won't have the name DS or Wii in it.
I honestly think we'll talk about, we'll speculate why and what it could be. Is it a successor to 3DS? Is it a successor to Wii U? Is it both?
Hybrid.
Right, exactly. There's lots of things up in the air. But there was another thing I wanted to make mention of regarding NX, which is it sounds like way more badass and kind of, I don't know, cutting
Oh, well, that's
edge
just a
than
code name.
I know, but like you think about it, and Nintendo's code names generally kind of soft. Aside from Revolution, which we were all really excited about that when it came to the Wii. You think Cafe, you think Dolphin, you think like I don't know. There's lots of kind of more softer names, and a lot of people kind of been thinking, oh, the X is like cross, so it's like a cross device, but it's not actually because in Japan, if it was a cross, then he would have said cross because that's how they say it. He said NX, so in Japanese it is an X, not a cross. It's a whole thing. Like
Oh, really?
Japanese is
Okay,
weird.
that's
Like
interesting.
that's why Xenoblade X is actually called Xenoblade Cross in Japanese, but this is the NX. There's a distinction between the two, which I don't want to get into because I don't know anything about it. But yeah, I don't know. What does it suggest to you? This codename, Bally? Are you getting any vibes from it whatsoever?
It's going to be a VR headset. No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
I think it's so hard to tell because if they unified handheld and home console in some way, they really are putting all their eggs in one basket, surely. Or maybe that's why they've gone with this mobile market as well.
And that's the thing I'm a little afraid of. Imagine a situation where Nintendo decide to get rid of their handheld business as a result of the mobile business being successful. So if they do well, I know it wouldn't. For me, honestly, like this is kind of apocalypse situation when it comes to Nintendo.
Armageddon.
I don't think it makes a lot of sense considering how strong their handheld business is, considering like they're basically living off it right now. The 3DS is a relative success compared to, the Wii U's horrible, tragic demise. But imagine a situation where Nintendo are so successful on mobile, and instead of having a dedicated handheld, they just have a dedicated console and kind of pass their games in that sense. I don't think it's too likely, but I don't know, makes me a little afraid.
But what if the scenario was what I suggested, which is a hybrid and the mobile devices and nothing in between? Is that still as Armageddon as we were suggesting before?
So, if you listen to podcasts, if you're like me and you listen to podcasts, you will have heard everyone and their mother saying, "Oh, I have an idea. Nintendo should do a thing where they have a hybrid console where they have the handheld that connects to the game." Everyone says it. They say like, "Oh yeah, I thought of this. This is my idea." Fucking everyone. How could it be your own idea? And okay, sure, a lot of people have had this theory. Is going to be a thing. I certainly think if anything, if they do this, it would be a combined OS with two separate hardware platforms, whereby the handheld and the console, they don't necessarily play the same games in terms of like boxed releases, but they both play virtual console games similarly, they both play indie games similarly, and they'd both run on the same OS in the sense that they
but
both
you'll still get your handheld Zelda, which is designed for handheld, versus your console Zelda.
Right, I don't think it's going to be a thing where like it just plugs into like a dongle on the big screen. I don't think it's just going to be a handheld that has a dongle and becomes a thing. I think they will have a separate box and a separate handheld, if that is to be the case. But as we know, Bally, as people who follow Nintendo and know that they are fucking crazy, the press are never right. Never fucking ever. And they try and predict Nintendo, and they try and tell Nintendo how to run their business, and they try and say this and that. Nintendo do not give a shit about the games media, because they will do something fucking bizarre and make everyone question reality. So, yes, everyone's banging on about this fucking hybrid thing. Do I think Nintendo will do it? Fucking no, because they're Nintendo and they'll do fucking some stupid crazy thing where like it's a circle screen and you have to stand on it and like do, I don't know, like they're ridiculous.
I think if you pinned down a Nintendo Japanese exec and put a gun to his head and said, "I want you to tell me the 3 main American video gaming websites," he wouldn't be able to tell you. Like he just he's just like, surprised. What? They have video game websites in America? Like they're just so Japan centric that it's just like, we don't care what the rest of the world thinks. We're gonna do our thing, and it works more often than not.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the one thing that we can take from this is Nintendo are dedicated still to their gaming business, their hardcore gaming business. And Iwata basically, he was really forced to announce the codename here and just confirm they're working on it because they did not want a situation where websites are running stories saying Nintendo are doomed and going basically they're abandoning
it's like a buffer.
traditional games. Right, it is a buffer to stop those articles being written, because you know the fucking games media would do that. You know there are so many websites out there who are after Nintendo's blood and just like talk shit about them all the time and say Nintendo are doomed, they should get out, they should go and put their games on PS4 and Xbox One. I cannot count the amount of articles I've seen in the history of my time on the internet that have said that, because there are far too fucking many, and I can't stand those articles and those journalists.
And they're all based in the UK.
Well, I don't know. Some of them are,
Well,
but they don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about, and it infuriates me to no end. And Iwata, coming out there ahead of it and saying, "Look, we are committed to this. This is our thing that we're going to keep doing. We are a games business and always will be a games business. And we're sticking with our fans here too. This is a venture that we will hopefully be profitable on. And the best scenario to come out of this, I really feel, is Nintendo are really successful on mobile, make a fuck ton of money, and then can put that into their hardcore business and focus on making good stuff and being a profitable entity again. And it doesn't matter if, their next console is a big flop, because there will be people who still enjoy it and buy it and that kind of stuff, and they'll still be profitable on the mobile end. And that's where I hope things will go. But
maybe they can wipe Candy Crush off the face of this earth.
Look, if Pokemon Shuffle is more popular, at least, it has something, memorable to it in some way, a brand association that isn't throwaway and terrible. So we'll see. I don't know, Bally. I'm going to ask you though, would you download these games when they come out in, I guess, like end of this year? They're supposed to be starting to roll this stuff out. Are you going to download the first Nintendo game on a phone?
It entirely depends on what it was, and I think no matter what it is, I'm not going to be a sort of day one purchaser. I'd want to wait to see what reviews say, see what other podcasts say, and if they all say like, yeah, it's actually quite cool, you should give it a go, then I'll give it a go. But I'm not going to be, leading the way, elbows out in front of everyone saying, I've got to be the first to try this out. And yeah, it's not on the top of my list of things to play. Are you going to get it day one?
I don't know. It depends. Depends on what they do. Is it going to be a free-to-play thing to start with? Are they going to, do a premium app? There's so many unanswered questions right now, and I'm sure in the coming months it will all come into.
What would be funny is if you could wirelessly do something with a 3DS that made it entirely free for 3DS owners.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? And actually play it on a system with fucking real manly fucking interfaces like buttons, right?
No, I just meant as like a sort of skeleton key sort of thing that just sort of
if you own a 3DS.
Free.
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going. Yep. Well, they're doing it with Mewtwo and that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't rule it out if Nintendo. If they give benefits to people who own Nintendo hardware and say, hey, this is a premium game, but if you own a Wii U or a 3DS, you just download it for free. I don't know. That could be It could be a thing. We'll see. But there's a lot of unanswered questions here. A lot of stuff up in the air.
It's an exciting time, though.
Yeah, and we would like to hear from you. So send in all your thoughts and concerns and questions to our new email address, which we've already mentioned, but bears repeating. So where should they send their thoughts regarding the NX and Nintendo on mobile, Bally?
The new email address is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
It is indeed. So keep doing that. Before we go, we are going to talk a little bit about iTunes and how you can get this podcast. So you can subscribe to us on the iTunes store. It's a very easy way to get this downloaded to your ears every 2 weeks when it is available for your perusal. And we would also like to make a big push this week on iTunes reviews. Now, we've talked about iTunes reviews in the past and how helpful they are and how great they are for getting the word out about the podcast and, really helping us to get new listeners and branch out and expand. And with this rebranding, a lot of the purpose behind it is to try and expand the podcast as much as possible to new listeners. So, a concerted effort as much as we possibly can. If you have not reviewed us on iTunes, really, now is the time to pull the trigger. If you really enjoy the show, if you like what we do here, and you listen every week, and you're a silent person who doesn't send in emails, but you're sitting there silently enjoying, if there is any way to say, like, you know, I want to...
We don't want your money, we don't want your games, we just want an iTunes review.
Exactly. Bali, that's put pretty beautifully. It's like, you know, if you want to send us stuff in the future, like send us some games or whatever, don't do that. That is not worthy for us. We will not... I mean, it would be nice, cool, you sent us a game, but, like, the thing that helps this podcast the most out of everything is being reviewed on iTunes, and...
It only takes 3 minutes, it's not long.
Yeah, it's short process, you can write whatever you like, just get us a review up there, tell us what you think about the show, iTunes reviews... Let's pull the trigger. Let's do a concerted effort from everyone, and hopefully we'll get a big push here and get the show rolling on.
And we'll definitely mention everyone who gives us a review next show.
Yeah, so you know, there you go. There's your chance to have your name on the air. Get these reviews going, and we would appreciate it. Yes, we should quickly mention our Twitter account again. So Bali, where can they follow us on our new Twitter account?
Our new account is at TNL Podcast. That's TNL Podcast. And obviously, it stands for ThisNintendoLife.
Yep.
My new name that I'm still getting used to.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but I think that you know, it's good. It's good we have this nice refresher, and I'm looking forward to this year, Bali, the rest of this year. There's lots more to come. E3 is a mere 2 months away, and it's scary that is the case. But I am super excited, and I know that you are as well. So,
so excited.
So yes, thank you once again for tuning in and listening. We will be back at you in 2 weeks' time. Till then, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
The musical interludes used in today's episode were Naru Embracing the Light from Ori and the Blind Forest, copyright Microsoft 2015, and The Sparkman stage music from Mega Man 3, copyright Capcom 1990.
I would like you to try my favorite game, Cave Story, one of the very first indie games released in 2004. The game starts you off in a cave, shockingly, where you have no clue who you are and where you are. Through the game, though, you learn about the past while you
abort. Let's tidy this shit up. Let's tidy this shop so you don't trip over yourself.
Yeah.
Because I can see why you're tripping over yourself.
Yeah.